Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to gather together here. We just thank for each one that's present today and their families. We ask that you just lead and guide them. Pray that you'd pour out your Holy Spirit upon each one here and upon leaders of our nation and our state, our counties, and lead us in paths of righteousness and truth. Help bring us back to constitutional government and biblical standards in our moral lives. And we ask that you'd just bless this meeting and pray that it might be edifying to all present. In Christ's name we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Let me just talk for a minute about the Dan Fisher campaign. He's for real, ladies and gentlemen. When he says something, he means it and he will do it. A patriot, a statesman, and an honest guy who actually does want to restore state sovereignty and use that to bring about the absolute abolition of abortion and many other great things in our state. The main question that is being asked about Dan Fisher is, does he have a chance? Is there a way for him to win? Absolutely there is. Absolutely. In fact, I've got the reporting here from the Daily Oklahoman on how much candidates have raised to this point. Now, we all know that Todd Lamb has been the lieutenant governor for 8 years. He was a senator before that. So he brings with him a war chest of cash already. He's sitting on $1 million before he even starts to raise money for the governor's race. Now he's got a couple $1 million. So obviously he's kind of out there in front. He's the elephant that needs to be shot down. Then you've got Mick Cornett, who's entered the race. He's counting on getting a lot of chamber money, tall building crowd money from his economic development crony capitalist down in Oklahoma City. He's reporting for the first 3 months $181,000 raised. So those are your top tier guys money-wise. Now, after that, you've got Dan Fisher and the Garys, who all claim to be grassroots, the people's candidates kinds of folks, and they are more or less to some extent. Now, Gary Jones really hasn't been able to raise any money. According to this report, he's got $22,585, but I do believe that's the money he already had from being state auditor, so he hasn't really raised any money. Gary Richardson has $60,000. My understanding is he's funding his own campaign. He's not just real popular enough for people to write checks. My prediction, ladies and gentlemen, is that Gary Jones is going to drop out pretty quick. And we hope that his supporters will come over to, oh yeah, you can clap for that, and his supporters are going to come over to Dan Fisher. Just to give you an idea of the popularity of Dan Fisher with the grassroots, Mr. Gary Jones here published a video of himself talking on his Facebook page. This has been a couple of weeks ago. And after 8 days, it only had about 2,000 views. Dan Fisher posted this little 7 to 9 minute clip of himself talking on the Capitol steps about state sovereignty. And in 24 hours, it had more than 10,000 views. And a couple of days later, it's up to 17,000 views. The man is passionate. He speaks our language. He's saying the things that everyone wants our governor to say. He is going to be a real challenger to Mick Cornett and Todd Lamb. It's going to be the establishment against him. The good news is those guys are going to split the votes all over the state and give Dan a chance to win this thing straight up. Now, that won't be done on nothing. We can't win a campaign with zero money. He's going to need some money. But he doesn't need $2 or $3 million like these guys. He's much smarter with the way he's going to campaign, using the people in this room to go out and to convert their neighbors and their entire churches to support Dan. He only needs enough money to make sure we put a bumper sticker on all of our cars and a sign in every yard. And through social media, we're going to reach our target audience right on their cell phones. According to Pew Research, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.2 million self-proclaimed evangelical Christians in the state. That doesn't even count the lukewarm ones and the Catholics and all the other variety. We're just talking evangelicals. If Dan were to get just 10% of the evangelical vote, he would win outright in the primary. There wouldn't even be a runoff. Folks, this is doable with our help, and I think we can do it. The first thing I need you to do, since it's very early on in the campaign, is please contribute to his campaign. I have some forms here. You can do that today. If everyone who's given to OCPAC in the last couple of years were to give Dan Fisher $100, he'd have more like $40,000 to $60,000. Man, we could run an awesome campaign on that. If we get $500,000, $700,000, well, we're going to win this thing easily. So I want your help. I give you permission to take the shekels you might have given to OCPAC for the rest of this year and give them to Dan Fisher. I'll take your money and I'll give it to him personally. Any other questions or comments about that? Oh, I would also say he's already had some extremely successful fundraisers in homes. We had one last night, raised over $4,500. Lots of people are getting excited. I want to invite you all to think about having a meet and greet fundraiser in your home for Dan Fisher. I can get that scheduled for you. You just invite your 5 or 6 closest friends from church or what have you, and we'll have that in your home. And he'll come and do the stump speech, answer questions, and that will not only help him raise a little bit of money to run this campaign, but it begins to build the support through that network. When you see 10 people from various churches come together and get really excited about Dan Fisher, they're going to go then and start talking about it in their circles and in their communities. Before you know it, it's spreading like a good fungus, like good bacteria all over the state. Everyone's liking him, following him on Facebook. Then we're going to launch this thing on August 20th. Right now, if you go to the website and the Facebook page, you don't see anything real controversial yet. I mean, there's some memes up there, but we've got quotes of smart people that everybody likes and stuff like that. But wait until August 20 when we start launching radical videos, memes, and things like that, then you could start sharing. So go to Dan Fisher for Governor on Facebook, like the page, and start following him right now. It's amazing how many homes and hearts we're going to get to that way. You were waving your hand around.
I was just going to say, we have some people here today that aren't from the metropolitan area.
Right.
People from the Clinton area, the Duncan area, and places like that. Those are places that we really need. If you'd be willing to host a meet and greet for Dan, we really need people from outside of the metropolitan area.
Yes. And Charlie and I will help you do that.
I can tell you why later, and we'll be more than happy to help you.
Okay, so obviously we want to support Dan Fisher. There's so many ways to do it. Talk to me and Charlie afterwards about scheduling things, and we can hold your hand, co-host, help you do things like that. Let's now talk about...
I just had a question about that.
Okay, go ahead. I mean, it's very early right now. Everyone is really kind of hiding and everything. The only person out there really right now with talking points is Todd Lamb with his Renew, which is really just recycle the same old stuff. Everyone else is probably going to keep it close to the vest till the holidays. But we're going to come out full guns blazing and force them to have to reckon with our messaging very soon. Okay, let's talk election stuff here for a little bit. We had elections last night. Let me first throw up there the Broombaugh District. Come on, Broombaugh District. There it is. That was House District 76. Of course, we endorsed Shelley Broombaugh. Look at what happened yesterday. 3 candidates were very, very close to each other. You want to know how close it was? Less than 24 votes separate all 3 candidates. If any one of those candidates gets in, or if slot number 2 or number 3 gets another 24 votes, they're in the first place. That's how tight that was. So what does that tell you? What do we take away from that? I mean, the first thing that I take away from that is it's extremely unfair that even in a special election, there's no runoff. That is absolutely not fair. That absolutely must be changed. Just look at the way everyone has clamored and screamed for decades for a playoff in college football. We all inherently know it's not fair to just pick somebody who does well in one area and call them the winner, especially when they're going to represent 35,000 people and only 2,000 people vote. That is totally not cool that only 2 dozen people decide who's going to represent everybody on the Republican ticket. Let's jump over and look at Senate District 45. This was down in Mustang where I was. Here are the top 4 vote getters. You've got Paul Rossino and Diane Means were the top vote getters. Then the candidate we endorsed was Brian Walters, came in 3rd place. And then I put Scott Harris up there for a reason. He was the next biggest vote getter. Scott Harris was the young man who came here when Brian was here, and they were very, very similar. Both nice young men, but on a couple of issues, Brian was stronger. And there was something else Brian had going for him. He had some money. And he was also out there knocking on doors. Scott, by his own admission, was working in the office till 5:30 every day, and he didn't do a lot of door knocking. What he had was the support of Trinity Baptist Church and some core members of that body. So I actually did speak to Scott Harris a week before the election, and I said, buddy, I hope you noticed that we didn't say anything negative about you. You're a decent guy. We like you well enough. But the reality is you're going to split the vote with Brian, and neither one of you is going to win. But even if you put all of Scott's votes with Brian's votes, he still would have only been in second place. So Rossino is a Catholic. He was very well funded, and he was endorsed and supported by Leslie Osborne, Kennedy, and other rhinos in the legislature who were helping him out with funding and support all through this thing. There's something else I noticed about this. Rossino and Means were the two candidates who never showed up at any of the forums unless it was safe. They never got out there and were caught saying anything controversial. They refused to say what they actually believe and things like that, and they still got elected. It's very frustrating to me that 86% of the electorate, some of them ought to be electrocuted, of the electorate, completely uneducated. They're making up their mind on the way to the poll. I saw one person on Facebook who claims at least that she decided who she would vote for based on whether or not that candidate's signs were properly placed according to city code. Now, that's probably a lie and a bunch of BS. But, that's how shallow some people really do think. And I saw people in my own neighborhood, as I would canvass and walk through the neighborhood, I saw them waffling back and forth from week to week. Oh, I like this guy's literature. Oh, boy, he just talks so nice and he's so handsome, so I put his sign in my yard. And then you tell him that he wants to abort retarded kids, and they're like, holy smokes, really? So, I was able to convert a few people off Rossino based on what he went on record and said about abortion, but I just couldn't get to enough of them. And people are so fickle. So it's very disappointing. Any other comments about this race? Anybody else that was following it? So we'll probably have another rhino in the legislature. Let's talk for a few minutes about the Oklahoma Conservative Index that finally hit the newspaper and the website here a week ago. And I told you I would share some interesting fun facts about that with you. Of course, this is year number 39, I think, that Ron and Steve have been publishing that, and we've been a part of that for almost 20 years now, I believe, in forming that index. We actually do the work in soliciting the bills from the legislators. We submit those to them. Then, of course, we debate them and we vote on them. And it's really our choice here what goes onto the index. So we're very proud of what that does, that service to our community. Let me talk about the index for a minute. Here are some interesting things that I noted. First of all, the median score of the House Republicans only was 20%. That is a record all-time low in the history of the index. This is the worst it's ever been. Now compare that to the House Democratic mean score. That was 33%. So all Republicans scored much lower than all Democrats on the index this year. Now in the Senate, it was a little bit different. The Senate Republican median was 27, and the Senate Democratic median was 23. So not a whole lot better, of course. You'll always see a lot more similarities in the Senate, and the reason is because there are only 6 Democrats left in the Senate. So you're really just looking at the Senate. The whole idea of differentiating between the parties there is kind of laughable. And in fact, that's why I didn't really talk about the Senate much in an article that I published in the paper about the index, because those 6 are also the 6 Democratic leadership positions. Like, they don't even have enough Democrats to fill all the leadership positions. So there's 6 and they're the leaders. So you can't even talk about the rank and file versus the leadership like you can on the Republican side. So that's some very interesting numbers there, generally speaking. Let's take a little bit closer look at the House now and some interesting numbers there. The highest Democratic score in the House was 70%. Not bad, right? We wouldn't even call that a rhino by our standards. In fact, I'm thinking we ought to give this particular representative some sort of award. Maybe House Freshman of the Year, something like that. Now I want you to compare that highest score of a Democrat in the House to the Republicans who scored higher than the highest Democrat. There were only 6. Only 6 Republicans scored higher than the highest Democrat. And note that there are 72 Republicans in the House and 26 Democrats. Let's go in a little deeper to the House and see what else we find there. The lowest Democratic score in the House, now looking at the bottom, is 20%. It's the lowest Democrat. But the Republicans who scored the same or lower than that Democrat, there were 38 of them. 38 Republicans scored the same or lower than the lowest Democrat. And so that might beg the question, how many were on the higher side? Well, there were 34. 34 Republicans scored higher than the lowest Democrat. Ridiculous. There are a couple of really good articles in the Oklahoma Constitution newspaper, and they are available online even if you don't have a subscription. I encourage you to get a subscription to the newspaper. You're pointing over there. Are Ron and Steve here? Oh, we have copies of this issue. Oh, and Ron is here. Ron, wave your hand around. Everybody, you can get a subscription to this newspaper for, what is it, $25 a year? $15 a year for this amazing newspaper. It's practically lunch, right? Some of you are going to put down $15 today. So you need to get a subscription to this. But definitely check them out online. Take a look at the score. See how your representatives and your senators did. But I forgot what I was going to say about. Oh, I was talking about the articles in it. I wrote a very good article in there talking about the kind of analyzing these numbers and what they mean. And then there's another piece in there written by Representative Jason Murphy that's also very good. Mine is kind of a high-level look philosophically at what caused these really low scores. And the conclusion that I come to is that it's not really about principles. It's not about party. It's a false dichotomy to say it's about Republicans and Democrats. It's about human nature. It's about power. When you put people in power and then you give them overwhelming majorities and more power, it corrupts them even more, and you get what we've got today. This is about people having the ability to choose between righteousness and sin. And if you give them the opportunity to have an advantage over someone else, that's a huge temptation to sin. And we saw that play out in a big way in this legislature. So let's look now at leadership, because one of the points I made in my article is that leadership has the ability to take the rest of the flock and make them behave in a certain way, especially if they're freshmen. They don't even know where the bathroom is. They look to their so-called leaders to tell them what to do, and that happened in a big way. So here's the last slide I'll throw up here. It says legislative leaders. The Senate pro tem is Schultz. He scored 25%. In the Senate, the majority floor leader is Greg Treat. He scored 16%. So we're just looking at leadership. On the House side, House Speaker McCall scored 13%. It would have been 10, but he missed a vote. It could have been less if he hadn't missed a vote. And then House Majority Floor Leader John Echols down to 10%.
Boom! Shame on Echols. Shame on him.
Right.
He's a fraud. Thank you.
Year after year, he scored 90% on the index, and would come and receive our award and smile and nod for being a consistent conservative. But what happened when he was given power? 10%. So, yeah, that's a whole other issue. All right, so we've talked about the index. Okay, so speaking of the index, you have homework. How do you like me being the new president and always giving you homework? That's kind of different, isn't it? I was a teacher. So here's the thing. You need to go online. You need to look at the index. You need to look at the way these people scored, because next week our program is going to be a discussion, a debate, what I like to call cuss and discuss, what we're going to do about awards. We need to decide who's going to get the awards next week, and that's a group discussion that we decide together. So go through the list and think about, okay, who do I want to see get Legislator of the Year award in the House and in the Senate? Who should be the runner-up? Who should be the rhino in the House? Who should be the rhino in the Senate? This is a discussion we're going to have. It will only be productive if you've thought about it ahead of time. The way that's going to work is I'm going to give you a ballot with all the different awards, the standard awards that we give. And when we all come together, we're going to have you nominate certain names to receive those awards. And everyone who gets nominated will have a chance. We'll have a chance to vote for them in that category. And then we will advocate for and against these awards and try and persuade each other. And then we'll just vote and see who gets what awards. So be prepared for that next week. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I think the whole legislature